Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Welcome to Financial Issues. Thanks for tuning in today. I'm your host, Shana, and at Financial Issues, our goal is to help encourage you to be a good steward with a heart that is to honor God in everything that you do. So specifically, we teach you what it means to build and manage a biblically responsible portfolio where you're screening out the companies that are funding the dark agenda. We call that defunding darkness, and we encourage you very consistently to be joyful, generous, and obedient givers. That is our calling, is to equip and educate and edify the church in our responsibilities that are given to us in Scripture. So on today's show, we are going to focus on answering some of your questions that have been sent into the program. My friend and colleague, Jason MacDowell, is going to join us in just a little bit after the break to talk procrastination and a value of money called the value that money has called the time value of money. So where we often talk about timing the market, and we believe that it's time in the market that is of more value than actually timing the market. And so we're going to find out how you can make your money work overtime for you rather than you having to work overtime to make more of it. So stay tuned for that. You're going to like it. We'll also get encouragement from the scriptures. It will be in Isaiah 54:13. If you're a partner, make sure that you check the commentary later this evening. We usually get our updates out to the partners on the partner side of the website. It's usually late evening on Mondays, and we get all of the updates to the buy list from the weekly meeting that we have with our analytical team. So let's start with stewardship verse of the day. It comes from Isaiah 54:13. All your children shall be taught by the Lord, and great shall be the peace of your children. It's interesting that it doesn't say all the children who are collectively managed and reared by the state shall be taught by the Department of Education, since in the modern world, the Bible is sort of antiquated and, quite honestly, a bit offensive. It doesn't say that.
Was it Biden who said that all of our children belong to him, or that belong to the U.S.? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's the reference that I'm making.
There you go.
So, and look at the original command comes with a promise. Second part of that, and great shall be the peace of your children. You know what? Just hearing the word of God read aloud speaks volumes. So let me say it again. All your children shall be taught by the Lord, and great shall be the peace of your children. Gosh, there is just so much truth in those 18 words. I mean, when we think about what is said there, is it any wonder that our children have little peace and lots of confusion? The lines in public school between right and wrong have been almost completely erased in the name of tolerance and inclusion. What I have to say about that is thank God that He is planting after-school programs in public schools that teach the Word of God, share the gospel, and bring kids face-to-face with the Prince of Peace in the very place that men have tried to remove God from, and that is their schools. So that program that I'm talking about is Crossroads Kids Club. It is an outreach that is planted in public schools, and it teaches kids the gospel, teaches kids how to read the Bible, and brings them, as I said, to a face-to-face encounter with Christians who are living out the Christian life just as Jesus planned. So the teaching that they get in public schools is often contrary to the teaching that is found in the Bibles, and it didn't used to be that way, but thank God for Crossroads Kids Club, who are in our public schools reaching kids for Christ. Seth, what do you think?
It's well said, Shana. I agree with you 100% there. You know, Crossroads has mastered the biblical concept of teaching and raising up children to love Christ. And it really is a divine calling, you know, and whether it's through Crossroads doing it in the public schools, whether perhaps you're a Christian parent who's chosen to homeschool your kids, or even if it's just at nighttime, you're trying to catechize your kids, teach them the scriptures, teach them to love Christ, telling them the good stories, the old stories that are true. We need to be good stewards of this next generation by teaching them the things of the Lord. And Shana, I love the promise here. It's so that their peace may be great, just like you said. I think we all want our children to have peace. And so in order to have peace, they need to know what the Lord thinks about them. They need to know who they are before God, that they are sinners who have been, by God's grace, redeemed by Christ. And so we need to be the ones to teach them that.
Yeah, and meet the Prince of Peace.
Amen.
That's the great thing.
Amen.
All right. What kind of questions can we get to?
Yeah, let's start here with Amy, Shana. Amy's not a partner, but she's saying, I've recently changed jobs. I have a Roth and a 401k from the past employer. I need to transfer out within the next week or so, and she's just looking for some help on how to do this.
All right, so the place to start there is to contact your current plan provider. So if you have a Roth and a 401k from a past employer, you get regular statements, probably quarterly, but at least semi-annually. If you look on your statement, there's going to be a phone number that you can call. So you can call the phone number and you can just say, you know, hey, I'm separated from service and I want to roll my employer plan out to an individual account. What steps do I take? They're going to say one of two things. Either they're going to say, we'll send you some paperwork so that you can fill it out. You'll first need to have an account established where the money is going to be sent to. And then you can fill out our paperwork and you can tell us on that paperwork where you want it sent to. Or they'll say, we can help you with that right over the phone. So before you call, it may be a good idea to go ahead and establish your account, because what they're going to want to know is what's the address that we send the new money to, who is the check made out to. So that's going to be made out to the new custodian. If they make it out to you, it's going to become taxable unless you get it indirectly rolled over within 60 days. And then they're going to withhold money, and you're going to have to come up with the money that they withheld so that you don't have to pay taxes or penalty on any of it. So the best thing to do is just do it as a direct rollover there. And so you'll want to be able to tell them your new account number, the name of the custodian, and the address where it's going to go. And it's a pretty simple process.
Awesome, Shana. Charles is up next here saying the website improvements are well worth the wait. It's awesome. He says the growth and income model fits him, which is great. He's 70 years old, and he's overweighted in the utility sector. He mentions a few positions there due to the growth. The sector needs to be adjusted, and he loves your discussion on the dilution of it. That's great. His question is, how should I perform my analysis? What do you think?
So, and he lists a few things there. He says, you know, should I sell the one with the highest percentage gain? Should I sell the lowest one? The one that pays the least amount of dividends? All of those are really good thoughts. What I would say, and I don't know for sure if those are the only 4 stocks that he has in his portfolio, but if they are, I would suggest keeping all 4 of them and then just deciding how to split them up between the asset allocation target. So let's just say you've got 4 stocks, you've got a target for that particular sector of 8%. Maybe you want to have all of them at 2%. So you could figure out the tracker has been updated now to tell you what percentage of your portfolio it is, so you can figure that out. If it's 4% and you're trying to get it to 2%, well, you need to sell half the shares that you have. Or if you have, you can split it up. It doesn't have to be 2% to each one. If you are more income oriented and you like the dividends, there are 2 of those stocks that have bigger dividends than the other. He mentions that in his question too. So you could, if you have a target of 8, you could say, well, I'm going to give 2.5% in each of these 2 positions, and then 1.5% to the others. So, there's a lot of ways you can split it up. If he has more than just those 4 companies, then you're going to have a more complicated process as to, which ones do I keep, which ones do I sell. So, I'm glad that he enjoyed the conversation about dilution, and I hope that clarify some things and makes it easier there.
Yeah, that's great, Shana. A quick one from Scott here. I think it'll be a quick answer, too. Okay. Would you please provide a status update on IN52 as it's currently on BRI Watch?
Okay. So the one that, and I'll say it, the one that he's talking about is John Deere.
Yep.
And that has been on our buy list on the past. It's not currently on the buy list. We haven't marked as BRI Watch because there were some things that happened with the company, but they have since then kind of reversed course. They were considered dirty, but then they reversed course, abandoned a lot of their woke policies. And so we do consider them clean still, but we are watching just in case. So there are a few things that we're watching there. All right, that brings us to the end of the short program. If you're listening on an outlet that only carries the short version, make sure you get the whole program on podcast or by going to our website, financialissues.org.
How is Timothy Plan continuing to lead the fight as you guys now enter your fourth decade of leading this fight of biblically responsible investing?
We've been too silent for too long, and we can no longer be silent. You stand up, like Ronald Reagan said, we're only one generation away from losing all of our liberty. Yeah. It has to be fought for. I wish it didn't. And you can fight for it. You don't need guns and ammunition and that. You can fight for it, especially with your dollars, because it's always about the money. And when the money starts impacting people, they start paying attention. When we launched this, they said it couldn't be done, but here we are 30 years later. They said you couldn't get competitive returns, but here we are.
What a tremendous testament of God's grace.
Go to financialissues.org/Timothy Plans to learn more about Timothy Plan.
My life before I met Jesus, I was most of the time afraid. I remember one of my teachers gave the classroom an invitation for Crossroads. When they talked to me about the love of God, I felt a sort of peace in my heart. I will commit myself to learn more about God's Word, to be able to share the gospel to others.
To help reach more kids like Louise with the life-changing hope of the gospel, visit reachOurSchools.com.
If a woman sees her baby on ultrasound, it doubles the likelihood that she'll choose life. On top of that, we share the gospel of Jesus Christ with her. This is why you should support preborn.
Then they sat me down. If you were to die today, do you think you would go to heaven? And I was like, no. Keeping the child was my first stepping stone. And ever since then, God has cleaned me up from the inside out.
Help support women in need. Go to preborn.com/FISM.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. I'm your host, Shana Burt. Thanks for sticking with us. So I have my friend and colleague, Jason MacDowell, back today, and we're going to talk about some things that we get asked a lot about here on the ministry. We're going to talk about the cost of procrastination, how the time value of money works in all of this, and really how to get started. And some practical things about how to get started. Financial Issues, here at Financial Issues, we help a lot of people get started with investing, and we help them to build biblically responsible portfolios. We answer questions about financial planning concepts and really help people to be the best steward that they can be with the resources that God has given them. And we help people of all ages. People get started at different ages. We have people that listen to the show that are in their early 20s, and they're out ahead of the curve. They're ahead of when most people get started. And then we have people who are in the middle of their careers. We even have people in retirement. We even have people coming up on retirement that are just getting started. So we get asked a lot about the timing of starting. Do I start now? I've only got $10 a month that I can contribute to my savings. Should I wait until I have more money to invest? Or, hey, I'm starting late. What do I need to do to get caught up? So a good place to start is always with the scripture. In Proverbs 24, it says, the sluggard does not have plow in the autumn. He will seek at harvest and have nothing. So, if you wait and you don't act when it's time to sow, the ground may not yield anything for you later on. So it's always a good idea to get started early. Or you may have to invest more later down the road to get the same results than the person who started earlier. So money has this value, this time value. It has value in the present, and it has value in the future should we get to that future date. So Jason, walk us through an example of the impact that time has on the growth of money. Explain the kind of difference between starting early and waiting, and how that can make a difference in someone's investment life.
All right, so we're going to talk about the time value of money philosophy. So time value of money is a financial principle that states the value of $1 today is worth more than the value of $1 in the future if it is invested. So it just means that the philosophy holds true because money today can be invested and potentially grow into a larger amount in the future. So, of course, if it's sitting around not doing anything, then inflation eats it. So we'll just make that point. So let's use an example here. So let's husband and a wife, household investing. Husband and wife both invest a principal amount of $12,000 a year for 10 years. So they're just going to be contributing for 10 years, $12,000 apiece. So the total is about $120,000 per individual. And their stop working age in this example will just be age 70. So that's like a target age. The wife starts contributions at age 50 with an average rate of return of 6%, and she decides to stop contributing at age 60. So for the wife, the compound interest and contributions combined will have an accumulation result in savings or to the portfolio of $468,000 by age 70. So let's look at the husband. He starts saving much later at age 60. So a different age. The wife started at 50 and the husband started at 60 with the same amount each year contributing. He stops also by age 70. So shortening the investment growth period to just the 10 years with the same average rate of return of 6% results only in $167,000 of savings. So the difference here is that time was shorter. So both couples invested the same amount of dollars in the 10-year period, and they stopped at the same time. What was different was that the wife had more time of compound interest to work from the age of age 50 to 70, whereas the husband's was only working from age 60 to 70. So again, time is a factor here. It's very important. So the procrastinator husband had a difference of $301,000 less using the example that we had here due to less time.
Thanks for taking that bullet and making the man the procrastinator, not the woman.
Yep.
Let's put a little twist on that too. And let's just assume, we'll just say that the person who started late wanted to end up at the same place as the person that started early. Mm-hmm. The husband, in this case, the one who started late, would need to invest. Let's say they both wanted to end up with $468,000 when they stopped working at age 70. So the husband who started late would need to invest about $35,000 a year for his 10 years instead of the $12,000 that a year that the wife contributed from ages 50 to 60. So that's almost 3 times more per year because he lost the benefit of time. So the next question is, where do I start? I'll give you the rapid fire Friday answer. The best place to start, really the only place to start, is at the beginning. So we don't have a time machine where we can go back in time and, if we're 40 years old, we can't go back to when we were 20 and start there, and we can't go into the future. So we always have to work with where we are. We only have stewardship responsibility for what we have personally been tasked with managing. So we have to start by looking at our resources and the obligations that are weighing down on those resources, what we're called to provide for our family, and versus what we've been given, what's left over, what we can invest. And we have to develop a disciplined strategy for investing. So pick up there, Jason.
All right. So a lot of times when we do talk with clients, the conversation comes up that they're already doing a matching program with their employer account. That's fantastic. So
great place to start.
Where do we go from there? It's kind of like an order. If you want to save more than doing just the matching with employer account. So let's look at some options here. So in this case, with employer accounts, if there is matching, we recommend doing up to the match because that's free money. And then anything in addition to that, you have some options. So Roth IRAs are one option for that tax-free growth and tax-free distributions after 59.5. So there's some, tax treatment there, but that's a qualified account. If someone wants to stay out from the government's reach, they have another option of just doing a taxable brokerage account, which has no limits to it. So those are two options that someone can do if they want to save outside of, in addition to the employer matching account that way.
Yeah.
So,
diversification is always a great principle. So, you mentioned starting with the employer savings plan. That's a great place to start, especially it's the best place to start if, like you said, you get that match, because that is the free money and the automatic 100, if you're getting dollar for dollar match, it's 100% return on the money that you're putting up. So let's talk about some of the limits and the rules about the different types of accounts.
Well, the easiest answer is the unlimited limit, I guess you could say. That's almost probably a contradiction there, but the taxable brokerage accounts don't have a limit to it because they're non-qualified. Any special treatment or have any special rules specifically that the government says. So that right there gives you the free reign of adding as much as you want to a taxable brokerage account. The next one we'll use is the Roth IRAs. So we'll use this year's 2025. For those that are under age 50, the max is going to be $7,000 in those. And then if you're over the age of 50, you can add a little bit more, which is $8,000. So that gives a little bit of catch-up contribution for those over 50. Individuals do need earned income for the Roth IRA. So a good example of that is if you only made $4,000 in that year, you can't contribute more than what you made as far as earned income on there. So that's a very good conversation to have with your tax professional on that part, because that's going to be individual and specific to that.
And then sometimes people are given different options with work. They may have the traditional route. They may have a Roth route, and they say, which one should I do?
Yeah, this one is very interesting. So speaking with a lot of clients recently, we're seeing that the Roth options are popping up more frequently, or either there's an education system that has notified them of asking their employers about a Roth option. So what are the Roth options with employer accounts? Well, it'd be a Roth 401k or a Roth account in a 403b plan or a 457b plan. They have the ability to contribute after-tax dollars to a Roth account. Now, these have special rules as well. They actually have an additional limit over the Roth IRAs. So these are really interesting in the sense that for those that are under age 50, instead of it being either $7,000 for Roth IRA and individual account, these employer Roth options have that limit of $23,500 in 2025. And then, of course, if you're over age 50, that goes up to $31,000. And then if you're in that special little window of 60 to 63, your maximum can be as high as $34,750 to contribute to an employer Roth account. So Sometimes employers have matching with it, sometimes they don't. But having that option is great because you can go over the limit that would be constraining you in a Roth IRA option. So I think it's a good idea to ask those that are under 50, or even if you're under 55, ask your employer if there is a Roth option, and you can talk with your tax professional and see how it would affect you, because it would be after tax money that way, meaning that maybe there's some less operational income coming to you after taxes in that treatment. So speak with your tax professional there, but that gives a bigger amount that you can add to.
All great information. It's good to have all the options. And it was like I was talking about on the show on Friday, you're really having to, I was answering a question from somebody, and you're really having to sort of play the game as to be the most efficient that you can with taxes. And, if Trump gets his way, we could see lower taxes, no taxes on those that make under 150,000. But I have a very hard time believing that Congress could actually have the fortitude to make no taxes a reality. But, the key here is that you have to spend some time reviewing your own income tax situation. If you're in the 12% bracket or lower, it's almost a no-brainer to allocate some, if not all of that money to Roth accounts. The government cannot spend us into prosperity because they do it inefficiently, but consumers can. I mean, can you imagine if the $160 billion that Doge found in savings could have been spent by consumers? Well, folks, we're right up against the break. Stick with us. We're going to be back with more financial issues right after this. If you have to go, we wish you a great day.
Every day, kids all across America are coming to school with some kind of hidden pain.
I've seen kids come in who are just so confused about what's right and what's wrong, just having no idea that God loves them. And this just breaks my heart. Crossroads has the opportunity to bring the Word of God right into the public school, to reach children right where they are.
And when we see that happen, we see God changing lives.
We want to see kids not only come to Christ, but pursue a lifelong relationship with Him. And so local churches are uniquely positioned to disciple those children as they become young adults and through their lifespan.
Crossroads comes alongside a church and provides that church with a club structure, curriculum, training, and ongoing coaching for them to run these outreaches in public schools.
If you are burdened for the children of America, consider making a donation to Crossroads Kids Club. For more information, visit reachOurschools.com. That's reachOurschools.com.
Welcome back to Financial Issues, everybody. Hope you enjoyed that segment there with Shana and Jason. I'll be taking you the rest of the way here. Seth Udinsky on this morning. We're live Monday, April the 28th. Happy to be here along with Sam Case and the Studio A team and a very special guest, a friend of mine and a friend of our ministry. I'm thrilled to have him. I was just telling him during the break, ever since we've seen this growing conflict between the United States and China, and it's been long term, but it's really heated up with these tariffs lately, I thought to myself, I got to have him back on. So it is Frank Gaffney. Frank is the president for the Institute of for the American Future, president of the Institute for the American Future, and he serves as vice chairman of the Committee on the Present Danger China. He is an American patriot, served under the administration of President Ronald Reagan. He was the Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security Policy and did some excellent work there. And so I'm so grateful for the work that Frank did. And Frank, it's an honor to have you on with me today, brother. Thanks for joining me.
The privilege is really entirely mine. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Frank, as I said, you're an expert in this very tense, sometimes confusing, but always fascinating relationship between the United States and China. You have a keen sense of the dangers that communist China presents around the free world. I hope it's okay with you. I've sort of borrowed your phrase that you have used on your show, calling China our mortal enemy. And I would agree with you 100% there. That's exactly right. And so I'd love to begin by just making some sense of this trade relationship between the two nations as it stands. Just give me your opinion on this issue. What do you make of President Trump's harsh trade policy with China and the implications of it?
May I just make a point initially? You mentioned China is our mortal enemy. I don't know that's true. Sure. I believe that the Chinese Communist Party is our mortal enemy.
Thank you for that clarification.
That distinction because I think the Chinese people actually don't have much use for the Chinese Communist Party. They've killed 100 million of them, for heaven's sakes. Yeah. And they realize that what they're doing to them, especially in this moment with this trade war, if you will, is worsening their lot in life. So our hope is, Seth, to see if we can't liberate the people of China from not only our mortal enemy, but theirs. Yeah. And one of the ways that I think Donald Trump is doing that, and I am ecstatic, honestly, is by trying to end arrangements that have basically helped prop up this mortal enemy rather than, counter them in especially what has been, by their own admission, a war against America, an unrestricted warfare. They called it for a time a people's war. They started calling it in May of 2019, a whole of society war since 23, I think. And my point is this: if you decouple from communist China economically, meaning you stop relying upon them as the principal source of imports to this country, all of which is, as you know very well, you covered it brilliantly, something that has been engineered to destroy our industrial base, our ability to compete with them. Well, that's part and parcel of what the president's trying to do. He's couching it, I think, properly and trying to end their predatory trade practices, but it's much bigger than that. This is a very important strategic play, and it's complemented, which is really important, I think, to your audience especially, by something that hasn't gotten as much attention as his trade policy has, but it's every bit as important, I think. He calls it the America First investment policy. And what the combined effect of these two could be, I think, is to bring incredible pressure to bear on this regime and hopefully create conditions under which its people are able to free themselves from it. And in so doing, to spare us the shooting war that I fear Xi Jinping has in mind for us if he can get away with it.
Absolutely. Frank, let's speak to that for just a moment, because you sent out a press release yesterday. Folks, I'm going to put the link to this press release in our chat here. This is from the website, Frank's website, presentdangerchina.org. It's a great read. I'd encourage you to do that. Speak to that for just a moment, Frank. Your premise in this is how the shooting war with the CCP could begin and how it can be avoided. I would love to know how it could be avoided. If you could enlighten us on that, please.
Well, let's start with how it could begin. We were picking up on something that took place on Saturday which is that 5 people, looks like special operators of the Chinese Communist Party, went ashore on this little spit of sand in the middle of the South China Sea, actually very close to a key Filipino outpost used to try to protect against the Chinese predations in that region. It's called Sandy Cay. And these guys held up a Chinese flag, and then Chinese military television announced that they've taken maritime control and sovereign, what they call jurisdiction over this little spit of land, a reef, basically. Now, why that's so important, as you know, Seth, is that they've been doing this all over the South China Sea. Now, in certain places, they've actually turned those reefs or atolls or what have you into military bastions the size of Pearl Harbor, for heaven's sakes. And they're using them to project power and to then control the resources. So this is a provocation. It is a threat to our friends in the Philippines. And if this were to be used in a similar fashion, it would create a whole new level of threat. So how do we avoid that? Well, our argument is these other atolls and so on have been taken over during the Obama years or during the Biden years. They've been weaponized. They become very dangerous. This is the first time that one of these things has been undertaken, or at least begun, on Donald Trump's presidency. The first one or this one. And we know that Donald Trump needs to push back on this, or there will be more of it to come, more and worse. So what we're suggesting is not the use of force, not even a military response, but something, again, that your audience will get immediately. It's financial in character. And that goes back to this idea of the America First investment policy. It's basically twofold. One, it addresses the inbound investment, and we're going to try to stop having the Chinese buying up our farmland or using their access to strategic real estate to threaten our bases or other things like that. But also outbound investment, Seth. We need to stop underwriting that mortal enemy, which is what we've been doing for far too long. And so our suggestion is, and most Americans don't have any clue that this is on the books, but in May of 2013, back when he was the vice president of the United States, Joe Biden engineered a sweetheart deal for the Chinese Communist Party that gave them access on a preferential basis. No American company has it. No other company in the world has it. But the Chinese have had access to our capital markets without having to conform to either our securities laws or regulations. So guess what, folks? You almost certainly have in portfolio right now, if you have emerging market funds of any kind, pension funds, mutual funds, exchange-traded funds, what have you, you almost certainly, thanks to Wall Street, thanks to this sweetheart deal, have money in Chinese companies, including some of which that work directly for the People's Liberation Army, building weapons for them with which to kill us. And by the way, not just our military personnel in the Pacific, but us here at home as well. And if you don't like that, you're going to like what we suggest is the solution. That the new Chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Paul Atkins, rip up this memorandum of understanding, rescind it, and in 30 days we're out. And that from that moment forward, the Chinese Communist Party, if it has companies on our markets listed there or traded there, should be subject to the same laws to protect investors and regulations that everybody else has to abide by, including American companies. Seems only reasonable. It has to be done anyway, but this provides a basis upon which to do it immediately. And we think that should be seized by Paul Atkins, the new chairman of the SEC.
Frank, that's great stuff there. Thank you for bringing that to our attention, and thank you as well for the work that you all are doing. We're coming to the end of this here, so I do want to try to squeeze this in, brother. How can our audience learn more about this work that you guys are doing? How can we support you? What would you tell us there?
Thank you for that, Seth. A lot of this work is done under the banner of our Committee on the Present Danger, China. And that is one of 5 very important committees or coalitions or task forces or working groups that we sponsor at the Institute for the American Future. Its website is usfuture.org, and the committee's website, which will give you access to a wealth of information, including a lot on these topics, but also webinars that we produce every week that are sensationally, I think, informative. That's all at presentdangerchina.org.
That's great. Frank, thank you so much, brother, not only for what you're doing now, but for your past service to our country. I'm so grateful you have boots on the ground experience in dealing with a mortal foe like this, as you served under the Reagan administration, pretty close to the downfall of the USSR. So we're so grateful for what you have done for our country and continue to do. It's a pleasure to speak with you, brother, and I look forward to the next time that we get to do it. Folks, that's Frank Gaffney. Again, check them out at those links. I put them in our chat there, so make sure that you check those out on our website at financialissues.org. We'll be right back after this. Stick with us.
It's up to us to stand up and say, enough is enough. All of this unbiblical stuff that's going on, whether it's abortion or transsexual or LGBTQ, widespread pornography, human trafficking. Bottom line, it's still up to us. If we stop investing in these corporations that are trying to destroy us, sooner or later they're going to wake up.
To learn more about biblically responsible mutual funds and ETFs, go to timothyplan.com.
Hi, this is Shana Bird, the host of Financial Issues. Financial Issues family is so blessed to have saved tens of thousands of babies, all thanks to the generous support of you, our listeners and viewers. For $140, you can sponsor 5 ultrasounds. Please go to preborn.org, that's preborn.org, or financialissues.org and click on the Preborn logo. Save a baby, save a life.
My wife and I, we moved into this neighborhood. We had some experience with Crossroads Kids Club. We had served at another club. We kind of thought to ourselves, it would be really, really cool for us to actually bring in a club that was able to share the love of Jesus with kids directly into the school. And so we started our Crossroads at Hilltop.
Crossroads is amazing. You can learn all kinds of things about God. That He loves all of us. He died on the cross to pay for our sins. That He will help me in every way.
There is just such tremendous opportunity to reach kids in some of these areas that just aren't being reached.
Sometimes I pray every night. When I feel alone sometimes, God is right there sitting next to me. I can rely on Him no matter what happens.
To learn more about Crossroads Kids Club and how you can get involved, visit reachourschools.com.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Folks, what a great time having Frank Gaffney on. I always enjoy the opportunity to get to interview him. I know it's something that Dan used to do a lot, and I want to try to do that as well. Frank really is an expert when we're talking about this U.S.-China relations. Sam and I were talking during the break, folks. It's so important to remember the reason why we do this. We have Frank on, obviously, because he's a brother. He's a patriot. But he also brings up a really important point for us when we're talking about BRI investing, and that's human rights abuses. And we can't forget, folks, unfortunately, this is just the way it is. This is not in any way to be cruel to any sort of ethnicity or race, but the Chinese Communist Party is notorious for committing human rights abuses. And so you will find, specifically when you're talking about our friends at Timothy Plan has actually screened out companies that are based in China for that very reason. And so this is so important for us to remember, folks. So often we talk about the issues when we're talking about the fight for life, for example, or we're talking about, the LGBTQ issues. We can't forget also that if we're trying to be biblically responsible, we need to screen out companies that partake in human rights abuses. And that is unfortunately the case with a lot of these Chinese companies. So I can't stress enough not only what Frank is doing, the good work in exposing this, but also what Timothy Plan is doing as well in making sure that they're presenting investments that are not invested in these types of companies. And so it's just really good stuff there, folks. I would encourage you to check out both of those organizations. Frank's website, by the way, he had mentioned it, presentdangerchina.org would be a really good place to go, especially if you want that press release from yesterday. And then if you want to learn more about Timothy Plan, timothyplan.com. You can find that information on our website, financialissues.org. I'm sure we'll be having a Timothy Plan guest on sometime soon. But at any rate, that's what we're looking like there, folks. All right, let's hear from Craig Haugaard with today's Ag Report, and then we'll take a look at some more news headlines in the markets. Here's Craig with today's Ag Update.
This is Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update for April 28th. Corn got off to a good start on Friday with the announcement of an export sale to Mexico. In other export news, Japan is contemplating increasing the imports of U.S. corn as a part of trade negotiations. They currently buy 60 to 70% of their corn needs from the U.S. The closing bell, we had July $0.015 higher on Friday at $4.85 1/2. Soybeans slipped into the Friday's closes. We saw aggressive fund selling. Now, the last couple of weeks, we've seen speculative buying on the assumption that a renewable fuels announcement was right around the corner. As a result of that buying, U.S. soybean oil is now higher than palm oil, leaving those who had long positions in the bean oil complex asking whether this rally had really kind of gotten ahead of itself. As a result, we saw a bit of a sell-off on Friday. July beans ended the day 2 3/4 cents lower at $10.59 1/4. Wheat saw a narrow range session with little participation from speculators or the commercial side of the market. Traders are waiting to see what happens with the Ukraine-Russian peace talks. For now, at least, they seem to be going nowhere, with Russia unwilling to agree to any proposal. Minneapolis July wheat was $0.015 lower at $6.06 1/4. Kansas City was 1/4 cent higher at $5.51, in which Chicago 1/2 cent stronger at $5.45 per bushel. Cotton futures continue to be range-bound. July futures ended the session on Friday down 37 points at 66.80. Livestock futures surged higher as we headed into the weekend. June live cattle futures were 25 cents higher at $208.25 per hundredweight. August feeder cattle were $1.60 stronger as they settled at $294.30 per hundred. And we had June lean hog futures $1.22 1/2 higher, closing out today at $101.15 per hundredweight. Class C milk futures slumped into the weekend. At the closing bell, May futures were down 5 points at $18.27. This has been Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update. We'll be right back with more financial issues after this.
Always good to hear from Craig, and good to hear from all of you as well in the chat. I see a lot of you there this morning, of course. James from South Carolina, George just north of there in North Carolina. George had a great comment, by the way, in regards to Shana and Jason's comments, saying, hoping for no taxes. Always cheers me up to hear it mentioned. Thanks, Shana. Cheers me up too, George, the hope of that. That would be awesome. But at any rate here, we also got Uncle John with a great comment here. Some good encouragement there for Frank Gaffney. Love to hear that. Good to see so many of you there, folks. And Sam, good to have you, buddy. I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
You didn't forget about me.
I didn't forget. Exciting. It took me 45 minutes to get into the show, but I didn't forget about you.
I've been here all along.
That's right. Absolutely. You know what's also been here all along, Sam, is this article that we've been waiting to get to. We had to wait till after the Frank interview to get it, but some interesting things happening between China and India. Can you bring us up to speed on that one there, Sam?
That's right, Seth. So China is really feeling the pinch. In fact, I saw an article this morning saying that Chinese manufacturing plants are shutting down right now because they really have no one to sell to thanks to these tariffs on Chinese imports. And it's not just coming from the United States. As you're right, India has now put a 12% tariff on steel imports to protect against cheap Chinese dumping. India is the world's second largest producer of crude steel in the world, second to China. And China expert Gordon Chang says that he doesn't think India is going to be alone in this. He says that other countries are soon going to follow suit. Here he is.
I think countries around the world have had enough. They've got to protect themselves, and they are now starting to impose tariffs. So, for instance, India just a day ago slapped 12% tariffs on Chinese steel, or steel in general. But that was really to prevent China from selling to India what it couldn't sell to the United States. And I think we're going to see this around the world as countries protect their local markets from what they anticipate to be a flood of Chinese goods.
Now, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has been warning about this type of thing since the trade war began with China. He's been telling other countries, you do not want to cut a deal with China. He says that's going to be cutting your own throat. He said China will harm your domestic industries by endlessly dumping cheap goods into your economies. Here's Bessent.
I can tell you that these Chinese exports that the U.S. tariff wall is going to keep out, that China, for all of you who can remember that Disney movie of the brooms carrying the buckets of water, that is a Chinese business model. It never stops. They just keep producing and producing and dumping, and it's going somewhere.
Looks like other countries are listening to Bessent. They know the Fantasia reference there. So
that's
what do you think,
Seth?
Thank
you. So first of all, I was trying to figure out which Disney movies.
Yeah, Mickey Mouse brings the brooms to life. They carry the buckets of water to fill the well, but they just keep doing it, and eventually the well fills the entire castle, and Mickey's in big trouble.
Interesting. Back before Disney was woke, by the way. Apparently Mickey's still in big trouble, but in other ways. Anyway, Sam, I really appreciate you bringing that up. Actually, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. To me, it seems like the clock's ticking for China. I mean, they're running out of options. We heard Jason talk about this last week. Just heard Frank talk about it in that last segment. It really seems to me like the United States is in the driver's seat here. Now, I'm not saying that this means we just go full force and really anger China to the point of where they might threaten to do something really harmful. But at the same time, we've got all the cards here, and it really does seem like China has to come to the table sooner. It's not going to go well for them. Just my opinion on this. Sam, I don't know what your thoughts are.
No, I think you're right, and that's what Scott Bessent said just this morning. He said, listen, man, it's up to China to de-escalate this. They're the ones who sell the stuff. We buy the stuff. Really, we have all the cards. It's on you guys to do something. He claims he's been meeting with his Chinese counterpart. China does deny that, but I don't know. Bessent seems to be a pretty honest guy, and China's in a desperate position here, so I'd be surprised if they're not talking, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Absolutely. Speaking of that, Sam, there was one headline. We weren't able to get to it with a lot of gusto, but it does seem like China is trying to meet with business leaders as well. Sort of a mirror move to what Trump was doing last week, meeting with some big business leaders in the U.S. So, again, that's no surprise. China's trying to do what they have to do. But at any rate, we'll have to see how this plays out, folks. You can bet we'll be talking more and more about this. I would encourage all of you not to be discouraged, not to be dismayed, not to be fearful. God is in control, number one. And just from a political standpoint, too, I think the United States is in a really good position here. So that's things to be encouraged by here. Let's close the show out with the markets, folks. So on Friday, the major indices battled. They finished a strong week on top. By midday, the Dow Jones right near the flat line. The other two major averages were soaring. Pretty much the same story, and that's how they ended. By Friday's closing bell, the Dow was able to squeak just above the flat line. The S&P 500 finished 0.75% above, and the NASDAQ up 1.25%. Really good week for the major indices. The Dow Jones gained about 2.5%. The NASDAQ gained almost 7%, and the S&P 500 rose just south of 5%. So a nice little comeback week there after several weeks where it was really kind of rough in the markets. This week, folks, earnings heavy this week. Some heavy earnings calls, especially on the back end. The Magnificent Seven stocks, and if you recall, those are Microsoft, Meta, Apple, Amazon, Tesla. That would be, oh my goodness, what is Google's parent company? Alphabet. And then NVIDIA, of course. Those are the Magnificent Seven stocks. They're called. 4 of those will report earnings this week. So pretty big week. Not much today. Tuesday, we get Visa, Coca-Cola, Pfizer, some others. Then Wednesday, we get Microsoft and Meta. They're really kind of the headliners for that one. Thursday, we get Apple and Amazon as the kind of the big headliners. We'll also get Eli Lilly, McDonald's, and Caterpillar in the mix in those several days as well. And then Friday, we get Berkshire Hathaway, ExxonMobil, and Chevron, as well as some others. So it'll certainly be an interesting week in that regard. In terms of economic numbers and reports this week, tomorrow we get the JOLTS for March, get the JOLTS number. Then Wednesday we get GDP for Q1, as well as the PCE for March. Thursday we get the ISM manufacturing PMI for April. And then Friday, some jobs numbers, non-farm payrolls for April, and the unemployment rate for April. All that to be expected this week here, folks. So that's what we're looking like here. I do just want to say thank you to you all so much for joining joining us on the program today. It really is a joy and honor to be able to do this every day, and I can't encourage you enough. If you've got questions, please put those in, especially tomorrow. We'll have Shana on the program tomorrow, so you're going to have to get your call queued up real early. 9:05 Eastern Time is the best time to call in. You call in at 9:05. We'll definitely get you in on that live show, so make sure that you call in there 9:05 tomorrow morning. Until then, remember, folks, it's all His. Let's be found good and faithful stewards with what God has given to us. He is on the throne, and we can be encouraged by that truth. God bless you all, and we'll see you tomorrow for more financial issues.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.